Okay, so that's my cue, I think, to begin. So a great big thank you to Rachel for coming tonight. We have so the background to this campaign is that we have quite a lot of safe practice issues and adverse incidents where boundaries and consent are involved. And we also have quite a few, I personally have quite a few discussions with practitioners regarding boundary and consent issues within their clinics. And we felt that it would be prudent and really beneficial to both practitioners and students to start building a campaign around this issue, because I think it's something that's very difficult to learn from a textbook. It's very difficult to learn from anything other than discussion and discussing people's experiences and having a bit more of a practical talk about this, really. And so we've been building this campaign. It explores many different aspects regarding boundaries and consent. We had the legal perspective from Flora, which was very well received. And tonight we're going to have more of an experiential exploration around boundaries. And then in the next few webinars, we'll look more at different themes around boundaries, looking at issues from different angles, and really hope to give a real broad depth to what we are experiencing and discussing within this webinar. So without any further ado, I'll introduce Rachel Milstead. And I'd like Rachel perhaps to give her own introduction to herself as well and tell us a little bit about herself, and then I will blank my screen and let Rachel do this. So thank you very much, Rachel, for coming tonight, and I really look forward to watching this. Thank you.
You're very welcome. I would just like to say thank you to everybody for coming this evening. I will introduce myself first of all, and then explain a little bit more about the session. I have been an acupuncturist since 2007. Prior to that, I studied psychology and worked in the NHS, in the mental health sector. So my interest has always been kind of psychology, a holistic approach to mental health, and acupuncture, I felt, gave me that. But that sort of desire to be involved in psychology didn't leave me, and I trained as a dance movement psychotherapist, and I'm currently training in a trauma treatment called somatic experiencing. So it's all about the body and movement, and you know, how we kind of store trauma within our body. So we're not going to go into that this evening, but it gives you a little bit of an idea of why I'm sitting here before you, talking about boundaries. I also work for a specialist mental health organisation that specialises in crisis and disaster mental health. So I kind of have my foot in two worlds, if you like, in my sort of acupuncture world, and then the sort of the psychotherapy world as well. The session this evening, I don't want to talk too much. Obviously, I need to do a little bit of introduction so that it kind of sets the scene. But really what I wanted to offer was more of an exploration of boundaries through our soma, so through our body. So we spend a lot of time being top down, don't we? You know, lots of brain activity, thinking things through and that sort of thing, which obviously we need to do. But sometimes we can get a different perspective if we maybe start from the bottom up. So our bodies, as we know as acupuncturists, show our tensions, our wounds. We carry our stories in our posture, in our movements, and in our cells. So if we're thinking about kind of working with our boundaries and exploring our boundaries, it's about kind of moving in space and exploring our space, sort of holding the idea of boundaries lightly as we do that. And that meaning may or may not come, but we're not sort of searching for meaning, if you see what I mean. So as we move through, there may be things that come in, thoughts, stories, all of that may or may not be useful to you. But if you can, kind of stay with the experience and see what happens, if I may invite you to do that. The other thing is, you know, this is all about your exploration, your experience. So it's really important to only do what feels right for you. Everything that I'm going to say is purely an invitation. So if you would like to say internally no to that invitation, that is absolutely fine. I would really urge you, especially as we are thinking about boundaries, is to respect your own boundaries and only do what feels right for you. Okay, so that's the most important thing, really, I would say. I think that is kind of everything I would like to say at this point. Before we kind of get into the movement portion, there is the wonderful technology that we are all using to to meet today, but I had got some new headphones in order to be able to listen and move and do all of that, which I can't connect because my lack of tech skills is showing me up at the moment. So what I would say is, if you can't hear me, please let me know. Don't be afraid to unmute if you need to, or kind of put a thumb up or something like that, but I will do my best that you don't have to strain to hear me. Is that okay? Yeah, okay, brilliant. So what I would invite you to do first of all is really make yourselves as comfortable as you can, as is possible. So taking your time to have a wiggle, seeing if you can feel kind of your bum on your seat if you're sitting down, if you're lying down, or even if you're standing up. The points of contact, noticing the points of contact. And allowing that to be for a few seconds as we all settle in. I know I've had a busy day beforehand, and I'm guessing that all of you have as well. So kind of letting the day fade, if that is possible, and giving yourself permission to be here and kind of see what happens in the next half an hour, 40 minutes or so. And then noticing, I'm going to ask you to do what we call a baseline. So taking your own personal baseline, noticing where your attention is drawn to in your body at this moment. So it's not comparing it to anything, it's your own personal baseline. And it might be that you notice, there's a little bit of tension somewhere, that's where the attention is drawn to, or that, oh, it's a hot day, but I can feel the cool breeze, whatever it is, just noticing that and allowing that information to gently come to you. So our baseline is always important to us, and that's something that we can check in on again and again. It's something that we can use in our practice as well. Just, oh gosh, I've seen 5 patients this morning. What's my baseline now? So always checking in on what's happening for us, our own experience. What's our body telling us? Okay. And then, as I said, that safety is so important. So I want to offer a little exercise that can really help us orientate to our space and notice where we are, and hopefully bring that sense of groundedness and safety. So the invitation here is to take a moment to look around the space that you're in. Just very gently looking around. And if it's possible, yeah, I can see some of you using your neck to do that as well. So we're getting our brainstem involved in that. So we're taking in information of where we currently are. I don't know if that happened for you, but I did a big sigh as I noticed that I'm at home. And if there is anything that kind of catches your eye in terms of interest or beauty, something that is familiar or something that is comforting, there may be, there may not be. But if there is, and your eye is drawn to something, just letting your eye kind of rest on that for a few seconds and taking that particular thing in, or the detail that you've noticed, or the colour. And this practice, as I say, helps us to notice, hopefully, that we are safe in this moment. And often we don't have chance to do that with life being so busy, and with a sort of perpetual sense of slight discomfort can be with us. So taking some time to notice that can be really helpful. And also, if we are kind of tense and activated, it can really block our awareness. So to kind of get into the slightly more regulated nervous system before we do the exploration can be really helpful, because hopefully then there will be the opportunity for kind of the awareness and exploration to come through. The other thing is that if you did feel at all uncomfortable, or the invitation didn't feel right for your body, this is something that you can return to, orientating to the space, to the safety in the moment, the safety in the environment. Okay, so just remembering that is always available to you, should you choose to do that, should you want to do that. Okay. And now I'm going to invite some movement. So I'm going to stand up. So if you would like to do that, you can do this sitting, but I would suggest it's probably easier to do standing. I will guide you through, first of all. This is what I think of as sort of getting the joints mobilized, getting us exploring our space, but doesn't have any particular significance, other than we're moving in different ways. So it's slightly challenging for our brain. It helps our fascia, and it kind of just gets the ball rolling for us to begin moving. Okay. So it's going to be same arm, same leg. Okay, so normally we're thinking about moving different side to side, but this time we're doing same arm, same leg. Okay. So think about this as exploring the space around us and different planes of movement. Okay. So we'll do whichever arm you choose, but arm up, and then down to the floor, Then it's same arm, same leg backwards. Same arm, same leg forwards. Then here is where it's a little bit more tricky. Same arm, same leg, cross over, and we can cross our other arm at the same time. So this is good cross body movement, good cross brain movement. And then we open out wide. Okay, so we'll just do that a few more times on this side and then on the other side. Okay, so I'll go a little bit more quickly. Okay, so you can stretch up, feel the stretch. Down to the floor. Arm and leg back. Arm and leg forward. Arm and leg side. And arm crossed under and open out. Okay. And one more time this side. So stretch up, down to the floor. Arm and leg back. Arm and leg forward. Cross over, arm and leg. And open wide. Okay, and same on the other side. Okay. Reach high, down to the floor, reach to the back, reach to the front, arm and leg across, squidge it up, and open out. Okay. Reaching up, scrunching down, arm and leg back, arm and leg forward, scrunching across, opening out. Okay, so that was just to get us a little bit warmed up, getting us moving a little bit. Now here is where we begin sort of more of the exploration. So the first invitation is to imagine a bubble around you. Okay, so this is a permeable bubble. It can look any way that you want it to. It can be any size and shape. So it's your size and shape. And then the next invitation is to explore that. So you may wish to test the boundaries of it. You know, seeing how far it goes. And is it that there's more space at the front, but it's hard to find the boundary at the back? And what happens when you go up high? Can you go up high? Or is it quite small around you? So really taking time to explore your bubble. And also moving with your bubble if you want to. You know, can you move in space with it? Or are you kind of fixed? You know? Is it a small space and you're fixed in one spot? Or is it something that kind of allows you a lot of freedom? And there's no right or wrong answer in this. This is your exploration of your bubble. That's the important thing. So just noticing all of this, noticing your space as you move around, where there are, you know, how far away it is from you. Are there any gaps in it? That might be something to notice. Just allowing all of that information and exploration to take place. Does it go all the way around you? I worked with somebody once whose bubble stopped at their knees. So just notice that. You may not have noticed, does it go all the way to the floor? And then thinking about, is there anything that we would like to welcome into our bubble? So that could be kind of, you could do that with gesture, that you want to welcome things in. And think about, you know, good things that could come, that could nourish you in your bubble. Any positive emotions. Although we know as acupuncturists, there's no such thing as a positive or negative emotion, just emotions. But yeah, if there's more of a particular kind of emotion that you would like, can you welcome that in? Can you draw that into your bubble? Just spend a little time exploring that. Is there an emotion or a gesture that allows you to draw in? And do you want to draw that into your bubble, but also into your body as well? See what feels right for you. You may want to scoop things up from the ground as well, or draw things down from the sky. And allowing those things to kind of settle, to come into your bubble, but also into your body. And allowing that information to settle in. And because our bubble is a wonderful permeable membrane, so we can welcome things in, we can also push things out. So the things that we don't want in our sphere, in our bubble, we can push those out as well. So what would they be? Things that we don't want. It's okay to say what we don't want. And that can bring a sense of freedom. So deciding what we don't want in there that can be pushed through the membrane. Any emotions, situations. Just noticing what comes as you do that. And does it need a hard push out? Is there a sharp gesture that needs to come with that? Or is it a sustained movement outward? Just noticing that. What feels right for you? And again, if you're noticing kind of getting into the story, all of those things, if it's possible to come back to the experience, this experience of moving through, what that feels like in your body, what feels kind of like a satisfying movement to move things out. And does it always need to be forward, or are there things kind of lower that need to be moved out, or things higher? Moving things behind us, you know, things can creep up behind us. Maybe they need to go as well. So really taking your time to decide on that. Just coming to stillness with that, kind of allowing all of that to settle for a few moments. And then the next invitation is going to be seeing how we feel as we move forwards and as we move backwards. So are there things that we want to move towards? And are there things that we want to move away from? And noticing if you feel more comfortable as you move towards things, or if you feel more comfortable as you move away. So thinking about our kind of habitual patterns. Do we tend to rush into things? Do we tend to back away from things? And nobody is all one thing and not the other, but we may have our preferences or our tendencies. And sometimes the preferences are our preferences and they're helpful to us. And sometimes they're just our habits. And actually, they don't serve us. It's just what we've become used to doing. So the rushing forward or the backing away from things. So just being very gentle with ourselves, just experimenting. It might be like a little rock. Or it might be, you know, that there's a dive forward and a push away. So just taking time to experiment with all of that. And this may be new practices for some of you. Some of this may be more familiar to others of you. So whatever is happening for you, just allowing that to be, as long as you feel comfortable, as long as you feel safe. That's the most important thing. So, as I said, holding the theme of boundaries lightly. What can happen when we have sort of struggles with boundaries is that we can either struggle to kind of assert our boundaries and express our boundaries, or we can sort of go the other way and become very rigid with our boundaries. And obviously there's situations where we may find it more difficult than others. But if we can, our ideal is to have strong boundaries that are flexible. Okay, so we don't want to be rigid in our boundaries, but we do want to have them and understand what they are. So it can be helpful sometimes to experiment with what is our habit as well. So is there, when we think about boundaries, a tendency to collapse? You know, it means that our arms can't move sometimes. And it's hard for us to assert ourselves and push away. So you may want to experiment with that. Is this something that's familiar? Obviously, I'm exaggerating, but just seeing how that feels. Is that something that is familiar? Okay, it might be that you do that and think, oh, no, I don't want to go there. And that's absolutely fine. But just noticing, is this familiar or is this something that is alien? And if this is familiar, the kind of collapse, it's difficult to assert boundaries. Something that can be helpful is to think about our deltoid muscles. And I used this recently when I was being menaced by a large seagull who had its eyes on my sandwich. And so I took my shoulders back and went into my deltoids and I expanded. I grew bigger in that moment. And the seagull thought, oh, she's not the weakest link anymore. I'll go look somewhere else. So we can do this by moving. So it might be that, you know, in clinic, you need to take up a little bit more space and assert your boundaries. So we can do that by a few movements of palms forward, then arms out to the side, and then a roll of the shoulders. So I really like that one. And if there's any phrase that comes to mind, you can use that as well. You could say that internally. A little bit forward movement, a little bit of lateral movement, and then grounding and expanding into the space. So I really enjoy that one. Another one that you can use is using kind of your knee up and then a kick out. Knee up and kick out. You can do that around the space, knee up, kick out, knee up, kick out. And sometimes it can be helpful to say, my space, your space, my space, your space. And although this may seem exaggerated, it's about getting the somatic experience and the somatic memory within your body. So we're kind of learning this. So we're doing it in an exaggerated way, but it means that it's starting to imprint in our muscle memory and actually taking up more space and being more assertive in our space is really important. And that knowing that we're allowed to do that. And then coming to stillness with that when you're ready. And as I said, the other thing that can happen is that we can become very rigid about our boundaries. So somebody, maybe makes a reasonable request, but it's a hard no, there is no discussion. We cannot be flexible in any way. And, sometimes obviously we want to stand in our boundaries when necessary, but sometimes we do need to be a little bit flexible. We need to be pragmatic about things. We need to adjust things sometimes. So that can mean maybe we need more flow. We need more flexibility. If we think, if we're too much like the oak, I love oak trees, so no disrespect to them, but that is very strong, and maybe the storm comes and it snaps. We want to think in terms of boundaries more maybe about being the willow, so we can be bendy and flexible in the storm. So that may be something to experiment with. If we know that sometimes, there tends to be a rigidity, a hard no, an inflexibility, can we bring flexibility to the situation, to our movement? So how do we flow? And it may be just experimenting with that flowing movement. Like, oh, does that feel nice? Just to me. It may not to you. Just experimenting with that. Is this familiar or is this new? Is the rigidity more familiar? The standing up like a soldier, the tightness in our muscles? Can we bring some more flexibility to the situation, to the space? So just experimenting with that and seeing, can it go low? Can it go high? Can we vary our repertoire? Or is that challenging? Do we want to just do the same movement over and over again? Can we bring flexibility? Can we bring difference and change to this situation? And just allowing that experimentation. Seeing what happens, seeing what's true for us, what we notice in this. And I would invite you into stillness when you feel ready. And just letting all of that settle if that's possible. We are kind of doing a bit of a whistle stop tour. So there's a lot coming your way. So we need little moments of pause sometimes as we shift from one thing to the other. And there's a few other things that I would like to experiment with today, but just before we move on to that, kind of checking in with yourself, taking that baseline again. What's your baseline now? Where is your attention being drawn to now? And noticing, is that the same as when we started? Or is that different now? And it doesn't matter if it's the same or if it's different, it's just what is happening for you. And perhaps noticing what your preference is in this moment. Did you prefer the start baseline? Do you prefer how you feel now? We're allowed to have preferences, that's fine. Okay. So, as I was saying, that we want our boundaries to be strong, but we also want them to be flexible. And we can sort of investigate this a little bit further by thinking about our yeses and our nos. So one thing that I've sort of come to realize in my exploration of all of these things, you know, my boundaries are not perfect by any means. That is part of the reason that I'm here, because it's something that I'm interested in and something that I'm working on. And what I realized was that if I found it difficult to say no, then sometimes my yeses didn't really mean anything, because I wasn't able to say no. I wasn't really able to say, yes, I want to do that. You know, it was all kind of like just happening. So what I started to do to sort of cultivate this was to think about times where my no had been accepted and taken on board, and what that felt like in my body. So what was my experience of the sensations and how that felt to me? And then I also thought about what my yes is, when I really meant yes, where I could unequivocally and wholeheartedly say yes to something, and the sensations that that brought in my body as well. And we sort of see the yes and the no as, you know, maybe two poles of a spectrum. And, you know, we can kind of get a bit rigid that yes is yes and no is no, which obviously sometimes it needs to be. But again, can we create some flexibility and fluidity between the two for when we need that? So we can sort of come to our midline. This is maybe our neutral space. And our yes, and those feelings of yes, I can, and noticing those sensations can kind of be on one side. And our no, and the no, you know, that clear no, I'm not going to do that. And noticing how that feels in our body and the sensations that come. But that can be on the other. Now, you don't have to follow me. Whichever side is your yes, whether that's your left or right, and whichever side is your no, whether that's your left or right. And can we move between them? So spending some time in our yes and savouring our yes, and notice, where is that? Is there like a feeling of joy, of yes, of movement upward? Or is it a softening in the chest? Yes, I can do that. And then as we move through the midline towards our no, what starts to happen? What happens in our body? You know, is there a straightening up of a no, a strength in our chest, our arms? So whatever it is for you, kind of experimenting between the two. Is it possible to shift comfortably between the two, or is this kind of awkward? Does it feel a bit strange? Just seeing what happens for you. Whether one is easier than the other. Is it always easy to go to the yes? Yes, I can do that. Yes, yes, yes. Or do we want to stay in the no? I want to be in the no. So just noticing what is happening for you. And again, just checking in with your safety, as long as it feels safe for you to do this, as long as it feels okay for you to do this. This can be challenging. So just appreciating that and allowing your wisdom, your body's wisdom to come through. Okay. And it may be that, you know, you kind of stay in the midline, there's a little bit of yes, there's a little bit of no. But whatever that is, just experimenting with that. Okay. And again, if it's possible, holding it lightly. This is all about experimentation. Seeing, exploring, seeing how we feel in the space, seeing what our body can tell us, what sensations come. What are all the ings, the fizzing, the softening, the hardening. So all of those sensation words, noticing all of those. And coming to stillness with that as well. And that's kind of the main body of our exploration today. So there are a few things that I would invite us to do before we finish. One of them is you just doing any movement or anything or whatever it is that you need to do. You know, so sometimes people need to kind of shake it off, have a good shake. Sometimes we kind of need to pat down, you know, we're all energy workers, we maybe need to smooth the channels a little bit because we've been moving around, we've been kind of shaking things up a bit, you know, so whatever that is for you, do what you need to do, any kind of movement, you know, maybe there's a little bit of rocking to kind of come back into regulation. Do we need a little bit of a self-hug? I mean, we probably all need a bit of a self-hug, let's be honest. You know, we're still recovering from COVID. It's been difficult times. So self-hug, often right arm into the left armpit, left arm on right arm. And that can be very containing. Help us kind of just calm down a few notches. So whatever it is for you, just doing that. Just going to shake it off a little bit. Okay, yeah, and so when you're ready, coming back to seating, or however you want to be, sitting, standing, lying, whatever's right for you. And we'll just take a few moments again to orientate to our space. So we say in somatic experiencing that noticing beauty is the luxury of safety. You know, we can't notice beauty and appreciate that if we are feeling under threat. So if there is anything that you notice in terms of beauty or something that connects you to your life, to your space, maybe savouring that for a little bit. if that's possible. And just having the brainstem involved as well if you want to. Yeah, good to have a good look round all the way. Wonderful. And then noticing your baseline now. So seeing what's true for you in this moment. Where is your attention drawn to now? And again, noticing, is this different? Is this the same? Is it easier to connect in now, or is it more difficult? Just seeing what your baseline is. And then taking your time to feel your feet on the floor, your bum on the seat. And that this is the end of this particular exploration. So I wanted to leave just a tiny bit of time at the end, just in case anybody kind of needed anything. I know that we could, we're recording at the moment, but I'm here if anybody had any sort of comment or you know, had any questions or anything like that, we could always stop the recording for that. Also, there's a little bit of time if you kind of still want to move, or you know, if there's anything else you need to do, because sometimes after something like that, people can be a bit like, oh, I just still need to do this thing or that thing, in order for them to close and finish and feel complete with the session. So there's that invitation as well. Yes, so yeah, the kind of main the thread that I was holding through all of that really was our need for the strong yet flexible boundaries, and how can we experience that as we move, and that if we begin with the movement and the experience of that within our bodies, then linking that to the next webinars to come, then how can we kind of link that experience that we've had to the discussions and the other ideas that are going to be presented in the next 2 sessions as well. So what can come from this session? What do we know from this movement? And also, what can we take with us into those next 2 sessions, but also what can we take with us into our practice, into that space that we inhabit with our clients, our patients, but I guess really in life in general as well. So yeah, I don't know if people do want to comment or say anything, and we could stop the recording, or if there's, you know, anything else to be done.
If no one's got any questions to ask on camera, I will stop the recording. But just to say thank you very much, Rachel, for that. And definitely, yeah, I can see Lynn is clapping.
Thank you, Lynn.
And yeah, I'm sure people will get a huge amount out of that. So thank you very much.
Yeah, you're very welcome. And it's something that you could return to, you know, it doesn't have to be a one-off exploration, and it may be that there's different nuances, different kind of things that would come through each time that's explored.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.